so weird. And then that's what made me want to go because it was like 88 degrees out. I'm downtown Minneapolis, so but I didn't get done in time, so I didn't get finished Saturday till like 3:30, and the game started.
Yeah, it'll be like I was asking Forrest earlier. I said, you know, in 10 years' time, when we look back to that year that we're basically working out of our homes, will we even have any concept of like, what did we do that whole time that we were at home? Because I didn't do anything. I didn't go anywhere. I went to the grocery store sometimes or Target, but literally it was in my house for like a year and didn't do anything. So yeah, it's just, you know, it will be nice to get back to some regular activities when we're able to, just to spice things up a little, shake up the day.
I told my son I'm happy he's graduating this year, and now they told us we could bring four people max. Because I was like, at least you know he'll have some normal.
Some people, yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah, I think
I'm gonna warm up my tea real quick.
Oh, go ahead, go right ahead.
For this. Like I said, I don't know if this weird cough or congestion came on because it was like 56 degrees Friday. It was 84 degrees Saturday. Then it was 60 degrees Sunday and drizzling.
Yeah.
When I got back to town, it was like 58 degrees.
Yeah, we've been having some weird weather. At least it didn't snow here. They had forecasted it got pretty cold last night, that there was some place in northern North Dakota that was like 41 degrees. So we need it to just to warm up a bit, be a lot nicer.
At least like 65. I'm like,
yeah, 65 would be nice.
I'm like, geez.
Especially when it's like, I noticed my lawn probably needs to be mowed this week, and I was like, it's not warm enough to mow yet. Why is the grass growing? It's still too cold.
I know.
All right, we got one more person. Well, I'm gonna check my meeting because this isn't boding well for quorum. Oh, we got another person. So now we got 3. Hopefully we get another one.
I was going to ask, do we have enough for a quorum? But I think we do, right?
We just need one more person.
Okay.
Oh, there's Steve. Good. Now we got a quorum.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Does everybody have sound? Well, it looks like I lost a couple people. Let me see if they're on. Jenna's on, Cody's on. I can see Nicole. Can you hear me? Is your audio working, Nicole? Okay, awesome. All right. Now okay. Well, it's 5 o'clock, Tim, so you can start any time now that we do have a quorum.
Okay. So, do we want to call this meeting to order? And Robin, can we get a roll call vote on those in attendance?
Nicole Matson? Here. Steve Moore?
Here.
Brent Mead?
Here.
Azat Hader? I do not see him signed in, so maybe he'll sign in later. Steve Lindos? I do not see Steve either. Jenna Cayley?
Here.
And Tim Stone.
Here.
Okay, so we have 5, which is a quorum.
All right. And I guess moving on, are there any changes to the agenda? Or should we motion to approve the agenda as printed, or any changes?
I have no changes, Chair.
Okay, so then can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Is that Steve?
A second.
Okay. Your volume is really low, Steve. Not sure what's going on there. Okay.
And then do we move to a motion on those to approve the minutes also, Chair, or is that correct?
Yep.
So a motion to approve the minutes from the agenda.
I'll move to approve the minutes from April 27th, or I'm sorry, April 7th meeting.
And a second.
Second.
And then we need a roll call, Chair.
Oh, and can we get a roll call, Robin?
And actually, we need to go back. Did we do a roll call for the agenda?
No, we did. We
I
did.
don't think we did. Okay, so let's try that. We'll do the agenda first. Matson?
Okay.
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Beam?
Yes.
Cayley?
Yes. Yes.
And Stone?
Yes.
And I'm just checking to see if anyone else signed on. Oh, Steve Lindos?
And I assuming that there's no changes to the agenda, I also vote yes.
Okay. And now we'll go back to the minutes. Matson?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Beam?
Yes.
Lindos?
Yes.
Cayley?
Yes.
And Stone?
Yes. And I'll say moving that forward, Robin, is there any citizens to be heard or?
I do not believe there are any calls. Lucas, are there any calls on the line? No calls. Thank you. No
And then
calls,
do we
Chair.
take, Okay, and do we have a roll call to open this current public hearing, or I forget this?
Yep, just maybe you want to say what the item is and then ask for a roll call.
Okay, I think this, the request of Stormore LLP for the following considerations regarding the 825 46th Avenue. A, amend to the comprehensive plan from low density residential to community commercial and the rezone from TZ transitional to community commercial with the gateway overlay. So motion to open a public hearing.
I'll move to open public hearing.
Second.
I think Steve's second, but he's low.
Yep, I heard him.
And can we get a roll call, Chair?
You're the chair.
Sorry.
Mattson? Mattson?
This is on the motion to open the public hearing, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Beam?
Yes.
Lindos?
Yes.
Kaylee?
Yes.
And Stone?
Yes. And Robin, can you please give us an overview of the request?
Thank you, Chair Stone and Commissioners. As the chair indicated, the applicant has requested both a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezoning for this property that was recently annexed into the city. The future land use had called for this parcel to be low density residential. They're requesting to change it to community commercial. And because it was an attached property, it automatically goes to a transitional zoning until we figure what's appropriate. And because this parcel was already under development when it was attached, we had already decided on the community commercial would make the most sense in that area with the gateway overlay. Just a little history on this project. Back in 2017, Clay County had approved a conditional use for a self-storage facility on this piece that's just south of the city limits. They did work with the city of Moorhead on the conditions of approval because it was in our growth area. And then that conditional use permit had a condition that the owners had to sign and agree to an access and annexation agreement, which was approved in 2019. Because they were going to utilize a city street to access a parcel that was out in the county. Earlier this year, we completed the annexation for this parcel, and this rezone in the comprehensive plan amendment is the last step of the annexation process. We have not received any public comments to date, and staff is recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezone. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm looking to see if we have anybody. Yes, we do have an applicant. The applicant's representative is on the line if you have any questions for them or myself.
No questions.
No questions, okay. And let me check for callers. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is Steve Lindos. I guess one of the questions I had is, I mean, there's limits to or restrictions on what can go into different types of zoning. But, you know, this is going from a low density residential to community commercial. And so one of the questions, and I apologize for not, I was going to send you this earlier, to kind of what the process was, and you kind of went over that really quickly, but can you kind of go over why community commercial was better than mixed use or other types of zoning?
Well, I think that like I said, this project has been kind of ongoing for some time. It really goes back to 2016, well before I was here. And when we were looking at the use that they had proposed, which again, it's changed owners also a couple times, but self-storage was always the intended use because that's what the conditional use permit was approved for. So putting that in, you know, there was no housing. They were not proposing any housing. That's not to say that this growth area cannot be, you know, changed in the future, but considering what the uses are already along the Highway 75 corridor, there is a mix of, there's quite a few businesses along the corridor, and then there's some homes scattered about, and then mostly it's ag properties outside the city limits. So conditional use, or excuse me, community commercial is our most general commercial district. So they do have extra land that they have not developed on the site. So it opens the opportunity to allow them to do other commercial uses, like maybe, I think one of their concept plans talked about maybe putting an office building on the east side of the property. So that would still leave that open. But we did not consider mixed use that far down the corridor at that time.
And this is Brent Beam. This is completely built out, that particular parcel at this point. Is that correct?
Not completely built out. They did complete the first phase of the storage facility last year. They just got a building permit for 2 more buildings this year.
For storage purposes.
For storage purposes. And then there's still quite a bit, there's still some developable land. It's not a big chunk, but maybe about a quarter of the parcel is still available for a quarter to a third available to do some other development there.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And now that it, just for your information, now that it is in the city limits, when it was originally built, we did not have building permit control over the site. Now we do. So the 2 new buildings that were going to be built this year, they actually had to get a building permit through us, and before it was through the county.
Correct. Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Still no calls from the public, Chair Stone. Did we lose him? Oh, no, there he is.
If there's no other questions from anybody else, I move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
And then can we get a roll call, Robin? Or do we need roll call for that?
Yep.
Okay.
Mattson,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Beam,
Yes.
Lindos,
Yes.
and Kaylee,
Yes.
and Stone.
Yes. And any further discussion?
Don't we need a motion on the item before we have discussions?
You can discuss it right now. I mean, the public hearing part is closed, but you can do it either before or after is fine.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, I am paying attention, it doesn't seem like it, but are we splitting this public hearing into 2 parts for the amendment to the comprehensive plan and then the rezoning, or is there a motion required to do both at the same time?
We do the public hearings for the multi-items together. So we do 1 hearing, but then we'll want separate motions for the rezone and a separate motion for the comprehensive plan amendment. Please. Thanks.
And so with that said, then can we get a motion for the comprehensive plan amendment?
Move to approve the comprehensive plan amendment.
This is Nicole Matson. I will second that motion.
And can we get a roll call, Robin?
Mattson,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Beam,
Yes.
Lindos,
Thinking. Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes. And then can we go right into the motion for the rezoning from TZ to CC Community Commercial?
Move to approve the rezone of the property in question to community commercial.
I second.
And can we get a roll call, Robin?
Mattson,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Beam,
Yes.
Lindos,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
and Stone.
Yes.
I think Chair Stone is frozen. So we can move to the next item under other business. Yep, we lost him. So the other business item is the 17th Street corridor study. And we've got representatives from, looks like MetroCog and Bolton and Mink on the call. So I'm going to turn this over to Luke. Do you have can you share your screen? Are you able to do that? Do I need to, oh, actually, I think I need to make you a co-host. There we go. There we go. Okay, take it away. Except I can't hear you.
No.
Doesn't look like he's muted.
Well, this is Dan Farnsworth here. I can maybe jump in while we're waiting for.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Now we got.
There we go.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Can you hear me, Dan?
Can you hear?
Yeah, I
We can hear you, Tim.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know because I was talking and nobody said.
You froze for a while there, Chair Stone.
Oh, sorry.
So we just kept going without you.
Okay, sure, no problem.
All right. Sorry about that. Gotta love technology these days. So again, my name is Luke Champ. I'm with the Fargo Moorhead Metropolitan Council of Governments, also known as FM MetroCog. And I served as the project manager for the 17th Street North corridor study for the MetroCog side of things, with a lot of help from Dan, as this was kind of my initial foray into the project management. And I'll just pass it over to Dan to introduce himself here.
All right. Thank you, Chair and members of the Moorhead Planning Commission. It's good to see some familiar faces. Dan Farnsworth, transportation planner here at MetroCog. I'm also involved with this planning study. Just a quick little overview of who MetroCog is. Some of you know who we are as you're on our policy board, but for those who don't, we are the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for the Fargo Moorhead area. So that means that we do transportation planning studies and transportation planning throughout the Fargo Moorhead area, and we receive federal funds to do that. So in this case, this study that we did was funded 80% with federal funds and 20% with your local funds. So pretty good bang for your buck as far as the planning goes. Also, part of this study was Well, we worked with City of Moorhead. City of Moorhead approached us and said, we have this really wide street, and is there a way that we can take a look at it as there's going to be construction in 2022? So anyway, there'll be a project coming up in 2022, and this planning study is here in advance of that to help guide the future of this corridor. So with that, I'll give it back over to Luke.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So like Dan mentioned, the corridor study is really there to identify potential issues and opportunities for 17th Street North, and it incorporates public feedback so that the decision makers at the city, such as yourselves, can respond to what residents want and expect from future improvement projects. This plan also incorporates policies of other major plans for the city as well as MetroCog, and can be used as a catalyst for federal or state funding opportunities to help pay for future improvements to this roadway. And then this plan can serve also as a guide or reference for future relevant planning efforts, such as the current Moorhead Comp Plan update. So we started this project in March of 2020, basically in tandem with the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would love to just shout out to our study review committee. Some members and former members are on this call tonight, including City of Moorhead staff, MAP bus staff, Moorhead Public Service, Park Christian School, MetroCog staff, and then obviously we need to praise is our consultant, Bolton and Mank, who's on the call, Tool Design, as they were flexible and helped us navigate the work from home and virtual public engagement process that we're all way too familiar with now, although we still have technical difficulties at times, as we witnessed tonight. But most importantly, they completed the project on time and on budget through what was a heck of a 2020. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Jim, and it looks like Cody from Bolton and Mank, they're both on. So I'm just gonna let them kind of take away the presentation and talk about the exciting corridor study with you. Thanks.
All right, so as Luke happened to mention on the call here today, with me is Cody, he was the project manager, and my name is Jim Mertz. I'm a project planner with Bolton and Mank here in Fargo, and I served as the public engagement lead for this project as well as project planning for the project. So Luke kind of gave some of the introduction into the planning process that we underwent, but just a little bit of introduction on the project. 17th Street, the corridor study went from 1st Avenue North in the south to 15th Avenue North in the north. And so for the purpose of this study, though, we did break this into two separate segments. So the first segment on the southern half, the first 3 blocks is more of an industrial type use. And so that first segment has Park Christian School, DS Beverages, Steenerson Lumber, Burger Time, if you guys are familiar with the area. And then the second segment from 4th Avenue North to 15th Avenue North is largely single family residential. So here's another drone shot that kind of shows what the corridor looks like. This is from the southern end facing north. And you can see here that the roadway itself is a 3-lane section. So there's 2 drive lanes with a center left turn lane, and then we have parking on both sides. Further down the corridor, this parking is utilized for bus pickup and drop off for Park Christian School. And then from the north end, looking south, you get that runway feel that residents like to talk about, but it is a largely residential corridor, and this actually gives you that good look at what makes this corridor so unique. So there's 140 feet of platted right-of-way from sidewalk there to sidewalk, and then 60 feet of curb-to-curb pavement, which is about enough width to fit a 5-lane section that you might see on like a commercial corridor. But Luke did a lot of extensive research on this corridor, and we found out, it was originally platted in 1881. It was titled Park Avenue. Another plat in 1882 that followed kept that same name. Later on in 1936, there were some outlots in this northern section here that actually use the common name of 17th Street North now. But there was no ever, from some research that Luke did, there was never any intent for this to be anything other than what it presently is. It was not going to be a, a highway bypass or anything like that. So a very unique corridor, but with that corridor becomes a lot of opportunity to maybe make a better use of this space. So the project scope, like a lot of other corridor studies, we started with gathering the existing conditions, determining what the existing and future needs are for the corridor. We also conducted 3 public input meetings. Originally set out to conduct 2, but we added a 3rd. And then we provided some planning level corridor improvements that we'll go through. And then finally, we prepared the final report. And now we're kind of undergoing the approvals with you folks tonight. So our engagement, or our existing conditions process, like Luke mentioned, we did review a lot of the prior planning efforts that you guys have been involved with. These would include the recently completed downtown plan, the 2016 bike ped plan, and the existing Moorhead comprehensive plan to make sure that we captured those investments and make sure those plans are, and our recommendations were in compliance with those project plans. So an example, the bike ped plan and other plans like the regional transportation plan all called for a bicycle facility along 17th Street North to make connections between existing facilities at 15th Avenue North and 2nd Avenue North. So we also examined through this period the demographics and population trends in the area. We conducted a comprehensive transportation system analysis like is shown here on the screen that included safety. We looked at access along the corridor, operations of transit, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, along with a lot of the existing maintenance issues that Steve could attest to. And we also examined a lot of the key issues that plague this corridor: a lack of sidewalks, a lack of ADA compliant pedestrian ramps. There was a lot of comments about drainage issues along the corridor, and a lot of people wanted us to take a look at the traffic control. One of the key items through the study was to look at the intersection at 1st Avenue North and 15th Avenue North. And our team conducted a signal warrant analysis to determine whether or not a signal was warranted at either of those intersections. The results were that they are not currently, but that is one of the next steps, is to keep an eye on those 2 intersections. We also completed an intense environmental screening process, as Luke mentioned, that this kind of sets the groundwork for future NEPA or state environmental reviews. So, as we do with every other project as well, we start with setting our goals for the project. And as with any transportation project, the #1 goal is safety. We want to make sure that we're safely accommodating all users, not just the motor vehicles, but pedestrians, freight, transit, all those users. And then we want to provide efficiency so that people can move through the corridor in an efficient manner. One of the key issues on this corridor in particular was a financially responsible plan that was both cost considerate in the implementation stage, but also there's a lot of issues with the 60-foot curb to curb in just routine maintenance. Everything costs a little bit more. It's more expensive to pave, more expensive to snowplow. We wanted to make sure that we also were preserving the community connections, making sure that people had access to their properties, the businesses had access in and out of their business. And we wanted to make sure that all this infrastructure was compatible with the regional context. We didn't want to put in a major thoroughfare through a residential neighborhood. So we took this information to the public, and we started our public engagement right away, right as the project began, with a postcard that we mailed out that included an option for people to text to subscribe to get signed up for email updates for this project. And through the course of the study, we kept getting more and more people subscribed. The final tally was 112 residents that subscribed to project updates. And then we also, at the beginning of the project, we sat down with the business owners on the southern end of the corridor, Park Christian School, and then we just talked about how they use the corridor, made sure we understood their access needs. And then those that weren't unable to attend that, we did speak to all of them directly. And then after all of this, we were hoping to conduct an in-person open house, but we kind of shifted on the fly given the circumstances with COVID. And we went to a virtual open house, and we included an online survey, some recorded video, and an online comment mapping tool that we'll talk about. And then we really focused this entire time on education. We wanted to make sure that we were providing an educational background for all these different ideas and concepts that we might implement to make sure that people were making educated decisions based on with their feedback. So the results of this first open house, as you can see here, we received 183 survey responses. So actually over half of the people that we mailed out surveys to, that would represent a pretty great number there. You can see here some of the top priorities that we received. A lot of people were asking for roadway and pedestrian lighting. It is a pretty dark corridor at night. Another key issue was connecting the sidewalk network. There's not, especially in the southern section, there's not sidewalk connectivity right now. People also expressed multiple times that crossing 17th Street can be a significant undertaking with fast vehicle speeds, and the 60-foot curb to curb is not necessarily a road that you want your kids crossing. So here's another example. So you can see some of the concepts that really kind of stick out. And so you'll see those later on in our preferred alternatives. So at this point, we took a lot of this information and we brought it to our project team to develop these alternatives. So we took the public input and some of the study review committee input. We developed over 10 alternatives for the corridor. And then, as Luke mentioned, we had a study review committee that included a few folks on the call here, but Dan and Luke from MetroCog, Robin Houston, Jonathan Atkins, Lori Van Beek, and Steve here as well from the city of Moorhead. Travis Schmidt from Moorhead Public Service, Michael Levang from the Park Christian School, and then representation from North Dakota DOT and FHWA. And so together we sat down and we took this huge list of different alternatives that were developed, and we got it down to 2 alternatives for what is the southern segment, segment 1, and then we developed 3 alternatives plus the no-build alternative for segment 2. So then we took that to a second open house, a second public meeting right before Christmas. And like the first, this was using socially distant methods. And we took a lot of the information from that first open house, that educational background that we developed, and we applied that as well to this second open house to keep that kind of response based on the educational background. So our project website included an engagement summary from the first round to make sure that the public understood how we got to these alternatives. We also provided some background information on the project. We developed an educational video and visions and goals and alternative descriptions. So we also expanded the mailing to make sure that we got some extra folks that were outside the corridor limits, but also affected by the corridor, probably use it on a day-to-day basis. And then we also completed a virtual, kind of like this call, a roundtable like this, where we talked about the project, we talked about the issues, we talked about the alternatives that were developed, and we had a little bit of interaction with members of the public. And then, as I mentioned, we had an online comment mapping tool that kind of allowed the public to provide direct comments on the alternatives. As they can see it, it's an interactive and interactive tool that allows people to look at those in like a Google Earth type setting. And as always, Luke was available for calls. Kind of an interesting concept is that since a lot of these tools were based on websites and online activities, we also had a pretty significant mailing option that Robin really wanted to make sure that she insisted upon some low-tech options in still using the socially distant methods. So we did a pretty good mailing campaign that allowed people to back and forth with us through mail. We generated for this engagement period a pamphlet that had all those same information, and then they were able to request a survey that allowed them to complete the same survey that everyone in the public was able to. And I think we received about 12 completed surveys through that method. So for this engagement period, we received 135 responses. And in the first segment, that industrial segment, we received a lot of strong support for the developed alternatives. Both alternatives that we developed for that industrial segment received strong support. Unfortunately, through this engagement process, we also received a lot of opposition for this second segment, the residential segment. So with that response received, we ultimately decided it was best to go back to the drawing board, and we took a lot of the favorable elements, the things that people said that they did like from the alternatives that we developed, and then based on that input, we developed 2 additional potential solutions for this segment. So as I mentioned, we anticipated doing 2, but then we added a 3rd engagement period. So again, this 3rd engagement period was built on an online platform. We had an online survey that was available for people to complete. And we used pretty much the methods that we used to advertise this engagement period were the ones that showed to be most effective throughout. So social media, and then that email blast and the email and text to subscribe notification tool that we talked about, and we had 112 notified subscribers for it. So we were able to get through this period 86 survey responses completed for this 3rd engagement period. So again, about a third of the people that live along the corridor responded to this. And this time we were able to get strong support for both of the developed alternatives that we were going to talk about here in a second. We got a lot of people that really supported the 2 alternatives that we created that did not include a center median. So that gets us to the final portion here. We're going to talk about the recommendations, what we developed and brought to the public that was ultimately acceptable. So the on-street, the segment 1 includes on-street buffered bike lanes. That's what you can notice right here right away. So an on-street buffered bike lane. And then we also included a 10-foot shared use path that goes from 1st Avenue North to 4th Avenue North. It actually connects into an existing shared use path at Park Christian School. And then where there is currently not a sidewalk on the west side of the road, there's now going to be a sidewalk for that preferred alternative. And then just to show you guys, just briefly, here's the preferred alternative in a layout form. So you can see how this the shared use path connects into this existing shared use path at Park Christian School and then continues on to the north. And then again, where there is not currently a sidewalk in front of DS Beverages, we're adding sidewalk connectivity. And then an example of the curb extensions that reduce the crossing distance for this area in front of the school. And it also provides what we call traffic calming, which is when traffic is compressed through these 2 curb extensions, it provides a calming effect, a slowing effect for vehicular travel to provide additional pedestrian safety. And then continuing on segment 2, which is the residential segment, you can see that the shared use path continues. So it sort of keeps a continuous segment with the shared use path on this side for your family bikers, and then the on-street bicycle facilities that would be utilized by your more experienced bikers and commuter bikers. And all of this leads up to an existing shared use path on the north end of 15th Avenue North that will be a future connection to the Heartland Trail and a very valuable connection within the metro area. And then going back to the presentation here, one of the key items that we also discussed here is these sidewalks. Because of its extreme width on 17th Street North, the sidewalks are so far back from the intersection that it's actually the stop signs for these intersections, these side street intersections, are in front of the sidewalk. So vehicles, as they approach a stop sign, are stopping in front of, or actually they go past the pedestrian crossing presently. So that kind of makes it a little bit more dangerous for pedestrians to cross. So one of the concepts that we've discussed here and then has been approved by the public and the SRC is to bring these sidewalks in a little bit at the intersections so that the vehicles are now stopping. And that also provides the people that are driving down 17th Street, it makes those pedestrians a little bit more visible for their left and right turn movements. All right, so next steps, project next steps. Again, we're here right now. We're doing final presentations to the Moorhead Planning Commission, and we are seeking adoption. But we also, through the plan, like Luke mentioned, we have some funding alternatives that were provided that could be looked at in the next year. And then we're also hoping to provide guidance for the 2022 rehabilitation project that was described. So again, I really appreciate the time of all you folks, and I hope it was a interesting project. It was a lot of fun for us to work on it, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight speaking to you about it.
Thanks, Jim. I had a question for Robin. Maybe I think in my memo I put a motion of for recommendation of approval of the plan. I don't know if that sounds accurate to you, or if an adoption motion is better.
Luke, you'll be asking the Planning Commission to recommend to the City Council that they recommend to the Policy Board approval of the plan.
Okay. Sounds good.
So it's a little complicated.
Yeah. Gotta love that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So I do have a question, and this probably goes back a ways, but this is a large street, and roundabouts are new in this area, but it's a well-established traffic thing. Steve Moore might comment about moving snow around roundabouts, but in terms of traffic safety, roundabouts absolutely calm and slow traffic in residential areas and provide kind of throughput. Can you comment on why that wasn't necessarily a viable option?
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. So it was actually one of the tools that was considered through our toolbox. And for a number of reasons, it was not ultimately brought to the preferred alternative. But one of the reasons was the public engagement. The public engagement was not necessarily in support of a roundabout in there. The other opportunities, really a roundabout needs to be at a location of importance for the two intersections. The 1st and 15th would be probably the two viable candidates for a roundabout, but the configuration as it presently stands with the 4-lane configuration at 1st Avenue North, not necessarily a viable location for the roundabout as it presently is configured. The other alternative that we discussed was potential roundabout at 4th and 8th Avenue North, but ultimately they don't have the crossing travel demands that would warrant a roundabout at those locations. So we didn't push for it, but the public didn't also necessarily want to see it. And Dan or Luke, if you want to weigh in a little bit additionally on that.
I think, Jim, the only thing that I would add is that we also, from a technical standpoint, looking at roundabouts, we looked at the initial cost, obviously, is much higher than, for example, just doing the curb extensions. And Steve Moore, you're familiar probably with the discussions we had about maintenance and snow maintenance. And granted, we don't make all of our transportation planning decisions on that. That is a consideration, and part of the goals, one of the goals of this project was to reduce the maintenance of 17th, and it was kind of just with all those factors put together, I think we ruled out roundabouts pretty quickly. But that is a good question.
Could somebody go back to the previous slide, please? there. So, I mean, this idea that you're showing about setting the crosswalks sort of closer to the street that they run parallel to, and then with the stop sign would be back behind the crosswalk. Is that correct?
Yes. So it's almost the stop sign barely moves actually with this configuration. The stop sign presently is pretty close to that same location.
Okay, and there aren't currently any visibility issues for somebody approaching that stop sign that you were just pointing in that region, either left or right down that street. I mean, this is definitely not making anything worse, I guess, in terms of visibility, is it? To see cross traffic.
No, and I mean, there wouldn't be, obviously there are some existing trees in this area, but there may be some tree removals that would actually maybe increase some of the visibility.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
And what should be mentioned here too is that with these curb extensions going into 17th Street here, it does increase the visibility for drivers going down 17th Street to be able to see pedestrians, and it makes them more visible. It gets them outside of potentially parked cars along the roadway here, if that makes sense.
Sure. Thank you.
This is Jenna Cayley. I have a snow removal question. So with these extensions, when the snowplow comes around there, are we going to see increased snowbank height at these corners?
Well, it's funny that you should mention, because Steve could attest to this as well. One of the considerations with these extensions is snow plowing in particular. Mostly for them going down this travel lane here, when this taper begins, it can become a little bit of a hazard for a snowplow. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we considered is that winter maintenance component to make sure this taper here is significantly longer and not so, it's more gradual so that the snowplow is not hitting it directly. That being said, what actually happens here is that your net roadway width is going to be actually a little bit less. So that means, if you have a foot of snow across here, your volumes actually would be a little bit less through this area because the roadway is there's a little bit more of it falling on grass. There might be a little bit more that builds up, right on that change line, but I would assume that, going through this tapered intersection, there's going to be a little bit less snow to manage through that area. Does that answer the question, by the way?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe along the same vein, I was wondering, in the residential section, and maybe you could move back to that slide. It looked to me like some driveways are going to be substantially longer. Was there comments from residents about snow removal on those driveways?
The existing curb to curb widths are actually not changing. The only reason that this green section is here is because we included this shared use path and we had to superimpose it over the top of the aerial. But the actual curb to curb width through this section with this the preferred alternative that was developed is not going to be changing at all. That's a great question.
Yeah, that was a major consideration when developing the alternatives. Is we prioritize those where the curbs didn't have to move, or they moved minimally at the intersections, for example. So obviously, when you start moving curbs and extending concrete driveways and that sort of thing, the cost effectiveness is a lot less. It's less effective, less efficient. So that was a major consideration, and almost every alternative kept I think all of them that we presented to the public kept the curb in its current place.
Thank you.
So Chair Stone, you might just want to check and see if anyone else has any questions or comments for the presenter. And if not, you can call for a motion to recommend approval.
And the motion for recommendation would be to recommend approved by the council, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And are there any other questions for the commission?
I just wanted to, this is Steve Moore. I just wanted to thank Bolton and Menk and MetroCog for doing this study. They did a great job on it, being involved in the process. So thanks for all your hard work, and it was nice working with you guys on this one.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I agree, Steve, that, yeah, appreciate you guys' hard work and effort on that. So appreciate that. And I think like Robin said, can we get a motion to approve a recommendation to the city council on the 17th Street North Corridor study presentation?
I can make the recommendation to approve to city council. And I just want to say also that I appreciate the extensive community outreach that was done on this. I think that really speaks to the engagement that we like, and you get good feedback.
Second.
And can we get a roll call, Robin?
Mattson,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Beam,
Yes.
Lindos,
Yes.
Kaylee,
Yes.
and Stone.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you all for the time.
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks.
And Robin, is there any more reports or information?
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just a reminder that the commission is invited to attend or participate in a workshop with the council and the Economic Development Authority on the Onward Moorhead Comprehensive Plan update. And that's going to be May 24th at 4:30 p.m. And because we're having so many people this is going to be one of our bigger meetings, we're going to keep the boards to be virtual, and then the council can decide if they want to be in person or virtual. So the people at the YAM comps will just be staff and some city council members, and then we'll have you planning commissioners just sign on virtually if you're able to attend. It'll be an hour because it's just right before the council meeting. And then the only other item is I included the latest version of the Planning Minnesota newsletter. I know sometimes those get dated because we get them in March and it's got January news, but sometimes there's little tidbits of interesting planning projects in there, so I do include those for you if you're interested. And that's all I have for that.
Appreciate it. And then at this point, is there a motion to adjourn? If there's not any other business.
I'll move to adjourn.
I will second. This is Nicole.
Okay.
And
Thank
do we
you.
need a roll call?
We do not.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Get vaccinated.
I asked that question every day or every month for 2 years, and I still don't know the answer to that question. See you later, guys.
Have a good night.
Bye.